Welcome to the HEARTS Entwined podcast. In this podcast, we'll be having discussions around the secrets which attract lasting, healthy, fulfilling relationships, creating a healthy mindset, and what women should know and understand about men. Introducing your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts, relationship expert, trainer, speaker, and best-selling author of the Cupid's Bow technique. Lyn's mission is to have a positive impact in reducing divorce, domestic violence, and suicide.
Welcome to the HEARTS Entwined podcast. This is your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in on today's podcast. And today I just wanted to follow up a bit on my previous episode around being too available, attainable and accommodating, because the feedback I got from some of the clients that I deal with around this particular subject was, well, how do you actually stop being that? Can you give us some tips as to how to stop being too available, attainable or accommodating? So let me just go into that to start with before I move on to my specific topic for today, which I wanted to discuss around the masculine energy that sometimes we default into. So when we're in what I referred to as that low value of feminine energy, and we are being too available, too attainable, and too accommodating, that's when you're probably feeling that you've invested more and are not seeing an equal amount of return from your man. So the best way to be less available is, one of my tips is by limiting contact. Either have no contact or wait a few hours after each call, text or email. And that's, unless it's an emergency, before you respond. So if you're in a position where you feel that you've been in a relationship or you're currently in a relationship where your man doesn't call or text you enough, and you're always the one that's calling or texting him, your response must be to stop calling and texting him completely and wait for him to call or text you. And this is a secret that many women find quite difficult to implement, because they start to worry, oh, he'll forget about me, he won't care about me. But believe me, he will. So if you're the sort of woman who's constantly checking your phone for messages from him and then replying immediately, stop right now, wait a couple of hours before replying, or maybe not reply at all until he's contacted you a few more times. And then if he wonders what you've been doing because you've not responded, you've been busy, whether that's washing your hair, running errands, reading a magazine, watching a favourite TV programme. All these actions class as busy. The impression that you want to be giving him is that your life doesn't solely revolve around him. Obviously, he's an important part of it, but it doesn't solely revolve around him. And it's the same thing if you're waiting by your phone for him to call and you always answer on the first ring. Stop that behaviour. Either let it ring several times or miss the call. Rest assured, he will call you again. And your woman's intuition will tell you how many times he needs to initiate action before you contact him back. And it's very important that you get this, because it's innate in men's and behaviour for them to want to do the pursuing and the chasing. And if you don't give him the opportunity to do that, if you're the one that's always chasing him, it's going to be very unattractive for him. That sort of behaviour, it's going to put him off. So if you're still unsure as to how often to initiate contact, I always say apply the 80-20 rule as your flexible guide. Let him contact you first 80% of the time. Another way to sort of change your behaviour so you're not coming across as being too available, accommodating or attainable is be unpredictable, and by that I mean give him lots of attention one day, but be totally disinterested the next. Not give him much attention at all. When you give out these mixed signals, you're going to be keeping your man confused. And if you make him think that you're a bit unsure about him and you're leaving your options open, his attraction for you reaches new heights, which then puts him in that pursuit mode. It makes him want to impress you and chase you. And you don't need to do this in a rude or a cold way. You can be a bit more subtle. You can, let me give you an example. You could say to him that you'll give him a call in a couple of minutes, but then don't call him at all. And he'll more than likely contact you then and say, why didn't you call? And you can reply with something like, whoops, sorry, I got distracted with something. But then in his mind, he'll be thinking, she isn't showing much interest in me. She has other higher priorities. And he might be thinking, maybe I'm not that important to her anymore. And he'll start to imagine that he might lose you if he doesn't make more of an effort. And so once he realises that he isn't, he's a high priority, but it's not the highest priority for you in your life, then his primal instinct will kick in, and it'll be a situation where he wants to drive the relationship forward and demonstrate his value to you even more. So this sort of unpredictable behaviour will keep all men focused on you and want to be the one that's pursuing you rather than it being the other way round. So what does that mean? It means that sometimes you might make an excuse to end a text or phone conversation first, more often than not. And again, use the 80-20 rule as a flexible guide. In other words, you end the communication and 80% of the time. So again, you're demonstrating your boundaries by doing this and giving him the opportunity now to invest more in the relationship and pursue and chase you and lead the relationship and take charge, which is what he wants. He wants that stimulation. This is going to really ignite his full masculine power and energy in wanting to make more and invest more in this relationship. So in summary, don't ever let him catch you too easily. Be a bit of a moving target and make him work hard at chasing you. So sometimes you answer his phone calls and texts immediately, and other times you don't. And maybe you don't for days if you're, still a single woman, or even if you're in a relationship actually, and he's away for a while. You can implement these sorts of strategies to give him that boundary. And sometimes you might be available and sometimes you might not be. Sometimes you might give him attention and other times you might not. Sometimes you're predictable and other times you're highly unpredictable. And sometimes you're interested and care a lot and other times you act disinterested and indifferent. So can you see, you must never be the one that's invested more in the relationship than what he is. Give him that time and space to be the man who takes the lead, who wants to cherish you, who wants to impress you, who wants to be your knight in shining armour. And allow him to do that. Give him the time, give him the space, so that he's the one now that's more invested in the relationship. And doesn't that sound great? That he's the one now that's chasing you and wants to move the relationship forward. So enough about the low value feminine energy situation, whereby previously, as I said, this is all around being too available, too attainable and too accommodating. I would like now to move on to the subject of what happens, or what are the traits, or what signifies when you're actually the opposite to that. In other words, you're in your masculine energy and how that can impact relationships. So if we're in our masculine energy a lot of the time and we're not sure what that means to be in that energy, then let me give you a few pointers around that, because again, this can be very unattractive to men if you're in your masculine energy a lot of the time. So a good example would be, I deal with a lot of women who quite often think, oh, you know what, when I meet a guy, if he's not quite ticked all the checks on my list as being the man I want, then I'll change him. Yeah, we're quite good at that, aren't we? We're quite good at even openly discussing this amongst ourselves, that, you know, we'll change the man. This is a huge mistake, to have that mindset that you can change him or would even want to change him, because what we actually need to do is look at ourselves and change ourselves. And on the back of changing ourselves for the better, then what we're doing then is giving him the opportunity to change himself to be his best self. So what I teach is helping you to change yourself so that he then changes himself to become his best self. You don't need to fix him. You don't need to try and change him, or look at him and think, well, I wish you'd be more like me. Because you know what? I've seen this happen loads of times, and it's something that I've done myself in a previous relationship. When you try and change a man to be more like you, guess what? He becomes a male version of you, and you won't find him as attractive anymore because he's stepping more into his feminine, and that's not attractive to a woman. A woman wants, in most heterosexual relationships, a man to be the man. He wants to be a man that you look at that's got a backbone, that you could admire for his strength and his masculine energy, and that you feel, has got that healthy, assertive passion for you in the relationship. He can't be that man if you're trying to change him to be more like you. And that's exactly what we do, don't we? We do try and change men to be more like you, and then we wonder why we don't find that man attractive when he does change to be more like us. So my teaching is all around, let's help him to be the best male version of himself that he can be. And the way we do that is by being the best feminine version of ourselves that we can be. So what are the things that contribute to us being in our masculine energy? And again, this is something that men find very unattractive. Well, it's when we're doing what I referred to in this instance as the 3 C's. Like I had the 3 A's around if you're behaving more around being a very low feminine energy woman. If you're being very masculine in your relationships and you're living and behaving very much from a place of masculine energy, what tends to be happening is that you're more liable to be criticizing him. That's 1 C. Complaining. That's another C. Or comparing him to somebody else. So these 3 C's, the criticizing, complaining and comparing, if a man hears any of the above on a regular basis, he'll feel really disrespected, unappreciated, and want to distance himself. So why often we get into this masculine space when we're not been looking after ourselves. So that's why, I'm quite, I suppose, tough with my clients and with my advice around keep coming back to setting up the foundations that are going to create long-term happiness and lasting fulfillment and love for you down the line. So part of laying those foundations, as I keep saying, is this well-being, making sure you take responsibility for your own happiness. Because if your happiness cup is only half full, then guess what? You're more likely to be in the mindset of being somebody who's criticizing him, complaining to him, and comparing him to others. And that, again, is not going to bode well for creating a happy, healthy relationship going forward. So the way to sort of recognize when you are criticizing, complaining and comparing is if you sound like you're nagging. And quite often men will say women nag, don't they? So if you ever hear your man saying that you're nagging, then obviously you're communicating in a way that might feel to you like you've had to tell him a few times the same thing because you need help or whatever. But you're not communicating that in a way that he hears as a call for him to be your knight in shining armour and come to your rescue. What he's hearing is you complaining and criticising. So there are ways, which I'll discuss in future episodes, where you can communicate with your man and get him to do things for you, get him to help out a lot. But you can do it in a way where he actually hears it as a way for him to show you who he really is at his best and come to your rescue and want to make you happy, rather than hearing it as a complaint or a criticism and feeling that he's never appreciated or respected in the relationship. So I'll leave it there for now around typical things that might give you the heads up as to whether you're mainly still in masculine energy when you're around your man or around men who you want to attract towards you to have a relationship with in terms of a romantic relationship, and see if you can relate to whether you're somebody that is contributing to him wanting to distance himself or not being interested in you as a potential partner, because what he's hearing is criticizing, complaining and comparing. And that is usually because we want to control the relationship. And that is a very masculine energy trait. So the feminine is all about relinquishing that control. And I don't mean that men have to have that control in the relationship, but he needs to have that in a healthy way from being the assertive one in the relationship. So I don't want women in this audio to think that what I'm advocating is for men to want to be the one who controls everything in a relationship, because that makes it sound like it's a toxic relationship. And that's not what I'm advocating. You know, obviously I'm very aware of what the attributes are that contribute towards a toxic relationship. And that is usually the men are very controlling, possessive, and very dominant and aggressive. And that's not what I'm wanting you to attract in a healthy relationship. But what I want you to attract in a healthy relationship is a man who is in charge of that relationship, leading the relationship, and is the assertive male in that relationship, in a place that he is very healthy, confident and fulfilled in himself. So that is the difference. You know, I don't want there to be any confusion there around what the word control means, because I know that can be a trigger for some people. And I'll talk about this again a little bit more in other episodes going forward. So I'm going to leave it there for now in this particular podcast episode around you thinking about whether you've engaged in any of the 3 C's of criticising, complaining and comparing, and recognising that is around the need to control, and also that is part and parcel of being in masculine energy, which is what I'm saying we need to relinquish in order to step back in to our feminine, to have that healthy, fulfilling relationship going forward. Okay, so for now, always remember, true love starts with opening our hearts. I'll leave it there and speak to you next time. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Hearts Entwined podcast. You can follow Lyn via the Facebook group Two Hearts Entwined, or search Lyn Smith, inspirational speaker, at LinkedIn, or email lyn@hearts-entwined.com. That's LYN@hearts-entwined.com. Remember, true love starts with opening our hearts.